Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Chantel and today I'm going to be doing a TBR, tentative TBR for the R Female Gaze SFF bingo board challenge. So a lot of people by now know about the R Fantasy Bingo Board Challenge that happens every year. I am also participating in that challenge. I actually have 2 more books to finish by the end of the month, so fingers crossed I get that in under the wire. And I'll definitely be doing a wrap-up for that when the time comes, and a TBR for the new one when that comes out, presumably the first week of April that'll come out. But there is another forum on Reddit that is sort of a spin-off of the R Fantasy forum, and it's the Female Gaze SFF forum on Reddit. And this is much like the fantasy subreddit. It's about focusing on speculative fiction, fantasy, sci-fi, dystopian, horror, whatnot. But the emphasis on this subreddit is a little bit more on female authors, female protagonists, and also authors of color, queer authors, or other kinds of more marginalized people and more marginalized representation, such that on this subreddit, you're less likely to get recommended Brandon Sanderson, Joe Abercrombie, Stephen Erickson, Robert Jordan over and over and over again. There's a little bit less of the white dude bro-ness of the main R Fantasy subreddit, and they just recently started doing their own bingo board challenge. This is a little bit different from the R Fantasy bingo board challenge. It's shorter. They're doing these challenges in 6-month increments, and they're doing them seasonally. So the first one they did was last fall and winter. So it was September through the end of February. And that one, they've been sort of tweaking and changing things from one to the next as they sort of work out what is potentially the best, most fun way to do these challenges. So that first one, it had 12 prompts. I did participate in that, though I didn't finish it. I only completed 11 of the 12 prompts on that original one. But that's okay, I'm not going to worry about it. I never got around to making a video about it, so it's not really, I'm not worried about it. But for this new one, the Spring-Summer 2025 challenge, which started March 1st and runs through the end of August, I am planning to do this one. So they changed this up a little bit. This time, instead of doing like a small 12 prompt bingo board, they are doing like a full 25 slot bingo board, but no one is required to do all 25 prompts in 6 months, because that's a little bit absurd. They've done 9 sort of core prompts around the middle of the board, and then the other prompts sort of around it. You can do, if you want, in order to like make a full bingo if you'd like, or you can just do the 9 primary prompts, and then just doing those 9 will complete the challenge for you. The others are just sort of a bonus, an optional thing. So, this is fun. There's no hard mode for any of these, so the prompts are just the prompts. There's no hard mode version of them as there are in the R Fantasy bingo board. So I thought I would try this one. 9 prompts I think is very doable. I'm probably not going to worry about any of the other prompts. I'm probably just going to focus on the 9, because I am still planning to do the R Fantasy bingo board, at least right now. Unless for some reason that bingo board comes out and I think the prompts are awful or something and I don't want to do it. But I don't see that necessarily happening. So this is just a fun little challenge. So I'm going to go through, I do have some books listed that I'm planning to read. As with the R Fantasy bingo board, all of these are potentially subject to change as my mood changes. I do not beat myself up about, actually following this list to the letter, because I'm a big mood reader, but I do like to have some ideas set down. So yeah, some of these I may give some recommendations for, though some of them it's hard to do for various reasons. So I'm just going to go through the prompts, the 9 primary prompts, and what I'm, at least right now, planning to read for them. So the first prompt is called Spring Cleaning, a good prompt for a spring summer bingo board. And that is to read a book that's been on your TBR for a long time, or the book that's been on your TBR for the longest, potentially. For this one, the obvious answer for me is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms by George R.R. Martin. These are the Dunk and Egg novellas that were put together in a bind-up several years ago. This has been sitting on my TBR for a few years. I just, for whatever reason, have never gotten around to reading them. My best friend read to me at least one of these novellas at one point in the past, like before this collection was actually released, and they were not as widely available. So I have experienced some of the story of Dunk and Egg, but I would like to actually sit down and read it myself. It'd also be fun to get this read before the HBO series, the Dunk and Egg series, comes out, which I think is going to be like later this year or early next year. So probably a good idea to do that. The second prompt is dragons, to read a book with dragons in it. This is kind of another easy pick for me, actually, because last year I started reading The Memoirs of Lady Trent by Marie Brennan, which is, of course, a whole series of books about a woman who studies dragons. And so I just slotted in the second book in that series, which I believe is called The Tropic of Serpents. So I'll probably try to read that. The third prompt on this bingo board is a trans or non-binary author or some other, yeah, I assume this encapsulates trans, non-binary, gender fluid, and other sorts of non-gender conforming authors. I tentatively added He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan to this. This is the sequel to She Who Became the Sun, which of course I read and really enjoyed in January. My understanding is that Shelley Parker Chan is non-binary and uses they, them pronouns. But there's a number of other possibilities. And also there's a trans readathon going on March 21st through the 31st, leading up to the I believe it's the International Trans Day of Visibility. And I'm going to try to read maybe 1 or 2 other books by trans authors during that time. So I'm undoubtedly going to have some other options for this. So we'll see. The fourth prompt on this bingo board is Old Relic, which is to read a book published before 1980. Considering I was born in 1985, calling me an old relic seems a little bit strange, but I guess I do feel a little bit old. I am turning 40 this year, so. But that having been said, I put on The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. I've read some Le Guin, but I have not read this one, and I would like to read more of her sci-fi. Most of what I've read of Le Guin's has been her fantasy, so I've read several of the Earthsea books, but I have also read The Left Hand of Darkness, which is another in this cycle. It's called the Hainish cycle, and I would like to read more of her sci-fi, so I put The Dispossessed on there, and we'll see how we go with that. The fifth is just the free space, which I really like, actually. I like having a free space on a bingo board. Because, yeah, I mean, you do. You're supposed to. The middle space is always supposed to be a free space. So that's just any book, right? Any speculative fiction book can be slotted into this free space. For the moment, I've put in Golden Fool by Robin Hobb, which is the next book on my docket for the Realm of the Elderlings readathon. So since I know I'll be reading that, I just put that in here for now. But again, it's a free space. Any book can go here, so. The sixth prompt on this list is to read a book discovered on the subreddit, to read a book that was recommended on our Female Gaze SFF, either directly to you or just one that you found recommended in a comment or a post that you think seems interesting. That's not difficult to do. Most of the major ones get recommended. I slotted in here Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wong, mostly because it's a book that is sitting on my TBR shelf and I want to read it, so I just shoved it on there, and it gets recommended a lot on that sub. The seventh prompt is female authored sci-fi. There's a lot of options for this. I've read a lot of female authored sci-fi, but again, I have Gideon the Ninth on my physical TBR. So, and that is like sci fantasy. So I'm going to put that on there. The 8th prompt is a coastal setting, to read a book set in or featuring a coastal location. I'm not sure entirely about this, but I've tentatively put Voyage of the Damned on here. This book is by Francis White. I have it, it's on my sort of to read list on Storygraph. My best friend, I think, read it last year and liked it, so I might give it a shot, and we'll see how we go with that one. The 9th and final prompt on this bingo board is to read a book with a predominantly green cover, presumably because of the spring-summer theme. The shoe-in for that one is, of course, Jade City by Fonda Lee, which has been, again, sitting on my TBR shelf for over a year. You can kind of see a recurring theme with some of these, which is that I'm trying to focus on books that are on my physical TBR shelf whenever possible. So I do have a few on here that are just physically sitting over on my TBR shelf that I know I want to read because I own them and I haven't read them yet. So I plan on doing something very similar with the Our Fantasy Bingo board as well, where I'm going to be focusing, I'll get into that when I get to my TBR video for that, but suffice it to say, I'm going to be attempting to focus on my physical TBR when I possibly can. If a book on my physical TBR fits a prompt, it is probably going to be slotted in, and I'm going to attempt to read it for that prompt. So yeah. That is my, again, tentative TBR for the Our Female Gaze sff bingo board. Again, these are just the 9 core prompts. There are a bunch of other prompts that you can potentially do if you want. There's Indigenous author prompt. There's an author discovery, which is to read a book by an author you've never read before. There's a middle grade prompt. There's a mecha prompt. There's a poetry prompt. There's a sisterhood prompt. Travel prompt, humorous fantasy, a sky setting or floating city setting. You can read there's a prompt for a main character that's 30 years or older. So there's a lot of potential options if you want to try to challenge yourself even more. And I will definitely put a link in the description to the subreddit thread with all of this information in it. So yeah, that is all for me today. Let me know in the comments below if you're going to be doing this challenge. If you've got any good recommendations for any of these prompts, let me know. But yeah, other than that, that's all I got. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.